Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Ayin Ches Amud Beis, 78b of Maseches Kiddushin, and we're starting the new Mishnah at the bottom of the page, which is 4 lines from the bottom of the page. The Mishnah says, Misha Nasan Rishus L'Shlucha L'Kadesh Esbito. A man who gave permission to an agent to go and accept Kiddushin for his daughter. So a man has the ability to accept Kiddushin for a daughter while she's still a minor, and he can appoint an agent to go and accept that Kiddushin. So let's say he did that. V'halachu v'kitsha. And in the meanwhile, he himself, the father himself, went and accepted Kiddushin on behalf of his daughter. So you have 2 men now, 2 people going to accept Kiddushin for the same girl simultaneously. So, im shelo kadmo, if the father's Kiddushin occurred first, if we know when each one occurred and his occurred first, Kiddushav Kiddushin, then the Kiddushin that he accepted is Kiddushin. The man that he accepted from would be married to his daughter. V'im shel shlucho kadmo, but if the shliach got there first, if the shliach accepted Kiddushin from someone first, Kiddushav Kiddushin, so then the shliach's Kiddushin is the Kiddushin. And what's, I guess, significant, as we'll see, we'll discuss a little bit in the Gemara, is that he originally appointed a shliach, and by then going and doing it himself, he is nullifying, at that moment when he accepts Kiddushin, he nullifies the agency of the shliach, and therefore his Kiddushin works, and we take it seriously. But if he wasn't actually nullifying the original Kiddushin, then we would set the original agency, then we would look at it that original appointing of the agent is still intact, and when he goes and does it himself, it's not the real thing. But we say no, it is, and if he accepts Kiddushin, he nullifies the agency of the shliach, of the agent, and the Kiddushin that he accepted, if it happened first, would be the Kiddushin, and if the agent's one happened first, that would be the Kiddushin. Let's say we don't know which one was first, top of the next page. Shneim nosnim get. So then both men would give a get, because you have 2 men, we don't know which one is married to her, they should both give a bill of divorce. V'imratzu, but if they agree, echad nosin get, ve'echad kones, one of them could give a get, and one of them could marry her. You have to give Kiddushin again, just in case, because maybe his Kiddushin was second, which means it wasn't a Kiddushin, but if they agree that one of them can marry her, then they can do that. One of them will give a get, and the other one would marry her. V'cheina isha, and so too a woman that appointed a agent to receive Kiddushin on her behalf. So you have a single woman, and she appoints somebody to go receive Kiddushin, accept Kiddushin on her behalf. In the meanwhile, though, she went and accepted Kiddushin on her own. So again we say, Im shela kadmo, if the Kiddushin that she accepted first came first, Kiddushin, and that Kiddushin is good, she's married to that guy. V'im shel shlucha kadmo, but if the Kiddushin that her agent accepted came first, Kiddushav Kiddushin, so then the Kiddushin of the agent is the one that's Kiddushin, the one that the agent accepted, and she would be married to the guy who gave the Kiddushin to the agent. V'im einan yodin, and if they don't know which one came first, again, we don't know which man is married to her, so shneim nosnim lo get, both of them should give her a get. V'imratzu, and if they want, echad nosim lo get ve'echad kones, one of them could give her a get, and the other one could marry her. So a similar thing, just here it's talking about where it wasn't a father accepting Kiddushin on behalf of a daughter, it was a woman herself accepting Kiddushin for herself and appointing an agent to accept Kiddushin for her. Okay, now ask the Gemara, or the Gemara begins and says, Utricha, we need both cases. In other words, why is it necessary? It seems to be just repeating the same idea twice. What would I not have been able to figure out if it had just given one example and not the other? So, says the Gemara, we need both. De'i ashmein gabe didei, had the Mishnah only taught me this halach in the case where the father accepted it for the daughter, so I might say, Mishum de Gavra Kimle B'Yuchsin. That's because a man is aware, confident about the yuchsin, the lineage of the person of the other family, and therefore he doesn't have any doubts. And so when in the case where he appoints an agent, and then he himself goes and accepts Kiddushin on his own instead on behalf of his daughter, so he's serious about that. He knows that he changed his mind. He wants this man for his daughter and not that one, not whoever the agent was going to accept Kiddushin from. And therefore the Kiddushin he accepts is real, and he's nullifying the agent's appointment, and therefore as long as his came first, the one that he accepted for his daughter, then that would be the one that's the Kiddushin. Aval itza, but a woman delo kim la b'yochsin, a woman who doesn't know as much about the yichus, the lineage of other families. This seemed to be, we already had this earlier in the Gemara, it's not something that the women discuss, the lineage of people, that's like a man thing, and so a woman doesn't necessarily know the lineage of the family that she's marrying. So Ema lo nihavu kiddushin. I might have said that her kiddushin's not a kiddushin. In the case where she appointing an agent to go get Kiddushin for her, to go accept Kiddushin for her, a male agent, and then she went and said, actually, I'm going to do it myself, and she accepted it from someone else. But maybe I might have thought to say, well, she doesn't really believe in it. She's not confident with the Kiddushin that she accepted, because she has doubts. Maybe they don't have good yichus, maybe they don't have good lineage, and maybe the shliach, maybe the agent's going to find a better shidduch for me. And so I might have said she doesn't really accept it, and therefore her Kiddushin that she accepts is not the Kiddushin, and rather she relies on her agent, who might be able to find her a better shidduch. That's what I might have thought to say. That's why the Mishnah had to say that even in that case, we say that, no, the Kiddushin that she accepted, she means it, and it's Kiddushin, and it nullifies the agency. As long as hers came first, then that one is the Kiddushin. V'yashma'in gabe dida, and had the Mishnah flipped again, only taught it regarding her, but not regarding the man who accepts Kiddushin for his daughter, I might have said, Mishum de'itza daiko mitzvah. That's because a woman, before gets married, she looks into the guy very carefully. Maybe she doesn't have the tools to find out all the information about his yichus or whatever, his lineage, but she is very careful before she enters a marriage, and therefore maybe in that case that's where we say, okay, she really means it, and if she accepts Kiddushin before the agent that she appointed, then that her Kiddushin will be the Kiddushin, and it will be a nullification of the agency. Aval ihu, but a man who is accepting for his daughter, ema lo chpat le, I might say that he doesn't really care so much, and if she marries the guy I choose, if she marries the guy the agent chooses, it doesn't make a difference so much to him. So maybe when he then goes after he appointing an agent and accepts Kiddushin, maybe he's not really nullifying the agency of the appointment of the agent. And maybe he's doing it just in case. If the agent doesn't find someone good, then here's a backup plan. But maybe he only means it as a backup, and it's not really, he doesn't really intend it for Kiddushin. So I might have said it's not a Kiddushin, and even if the father accepted before the agent, it would not be a Kiddushin. Tzricha, that's why we needed the Mishnah to teach that case too. No, we don't say that. Rather, we say if the father appoints an agent, but then he goes and accepts Kiddushin on behalf of his daughter on his own, then that Kiddushin is Kiddushin. We assume that he means it, and he's nullifying the agent, and that whichever Kiddushin happened first, that will be the Kiddushin. Okay. Itmar. We had the following statement. We're going to introduce a machlokas, a dispute between Rav and Shmuel. Kidsha avia badarach. The father was traveling, and he met a nice man, and he accepted Kiddushin for his daughter while he was traveling. V'kidsha atzma ba'ir. And meanwhile, the girl at home accepted Kiddushin on her own. V'harehi bogeres. And she's, and we check if she's old enough, because in order for her to accept Kiddushin, she has to be a bogeres. Bogeres is 12 and a half. So, and at that point, that's when she leaves the domain of her father. And it could also relate to, there's physical signs. So we check, and she's a bogeres. So, well, whose Kiddushin is good? When do we assume she became a bogeres? That she's able to accept her own Kiddushin. Her father cannot accept Kiddushin. Once she's a bogeres, once she's an adult, her father can't accept Kiddushin for her. So we check her that day, and she's a bogeres. So Rav Amar Harehi bogeres lefaninu. Rav says she's a bogeres right in front of us. We're going to treat her like a bogeres. She's an adult, and it's her own Kiddushin that's good, and not her father's. Ushmuel Amar Chayshinan leKiddushe Shneim. And Shmuel says, no, we have to be concerned for both of them. Maybe when the father accepted the Kiddushin, she was not yet a bogeres. But maybe she was. So we have to be concerned both ways, that the father's Kiddushin is good and her Kiddushin is good. She would need a get from both men, or, like we said before, a get from one of them, and the other would have to give her a new Kiddushin. Okay, so ask the Gemara Amos, what are we talking about here? How old is she? How old is she? Is she bogeres or not? Ilema betoch shisha. If she's within the 6 months after she turns 12, so she's not yet 12 and 6 months, Beha nema Rav ari bogeres lefanenu. Would Rav say, well, today she's a bogeres? Even if we check her and we see that she has the physical signs of maturity now of a bogeres, of an adult, but if she's within the 6 months, then we assume until we know otherwise that she's a naira, that she's not yet a bogeres. So would Rav say, well, we checked her in the evening and she's a bogeres, so it must be that she was a bogeres in the morning? No. Just because we checked her now and she's a bogeres, but we would assume in the morning she wasn't. Because she's within the 6 months of turning 12, we don't assume that she's a bogeres until we know that she is. So why would Rav say, well, right now she's a bogeres? Okay, right now she's a bogeres, but previously she wasn't. So if she's within the 6 months, it doesn't make sense that Rav would say that, well, she's bogeres now, so she must have been a bogeres this morning. That would not follow. So elo la'achar shisha. So you'll tell me it's past the 6 months. So b'hanei mashmuel chayshin l'kiddushe shneim. Would Shmuel say in that case that we're concerned about both Kiddushins? V'ha'amar Shmuel, but Shmuel said, Ein bein nairis levagers ala shisha chadashim bilvad. The difference between a naira and a bogeres is 6 months. And once those 6 months pass, she's a bogeres. Once she gets simane naira, she shows the signs that she's a naira, that she's now the maturity of a 12-year-old. So then 6 months later, she's a bogeres. So which one? So when is this? Rav is saying to treat her like a bogeres, but if it's within the 6 months of turning 12, why would we treat her like a bogeres until we know? Maybe now we know she's a bogeres. Right now but this morning, no reason to think she was bogeres. And Shmuel says, and if it's after the 6 months, then Shmuel says, then we after 6 months, we say, 6 months after one turns 12, you're a bogeres. So why would Shmuel say we have to be concerned for the father's Kiddushin? So, says the Gemara, lo tzricha. No, you know what we need this for? You know what they're talking about? Dekadish bahu yoma demashlim shisha. We're talking about where the Kiddushin happened on the day that the 6 months ended. The day that she came to the end of her 12 years and 6 months. So in that case, Rav Amarari Bogeres Lefanenu, Rav says She's a bogeres right now. And midahashta bogeres, and if she now has the physical signs of bogeres, bitsafra nami bogeres. So we would say even in the morning she was a bogeres. The father gave her Kiddushin in the morning. She accepted Kiddushin later in the day. And this is the day where she's supposed to become a bogeres. So in that case, Rav says that's the whole. If she's bogeres now, if she has the physical signs of bogeres, then she's a bogeres. And even that morning, because today's the day where it flips. So even from the morning, we would say she was a bogeres, and the father's Kiddushin would not be a good Kiddushin. He cannot accept Kiddushin for his adult child, and her Kiddushin is the one that works. Ushmuel Amar, and Shmuel says, Hashtahu da'aisi simanim. No, we say that it's only now that her simanim appeared. It's only now that the physical signs appeared. We only saw them now, is when we checked, but we will not assume that they were there previously, and Shmuel says we have to be concerned at least that the father's Kiddushin in the morning was a good Kiddushin, that she was not yet a bogeres. So asks the Gemara, Shmuel, Mai shna mi mikvah. According to Shmuel, who's saying that even though right now she's a bogeres, we have to be concerned that maybe in the morning she wasn't. Why is this different than the case of a mikvah? Ditnan, we learned in the Mishnah. Mikvah shenimdad v'nimtza chaser. They measure the mikvah, the water in the mikvah, and it's chaser, it's lacking. Oh, mikvah has to be 40 sa. When they built the mikvah, obviously they built it properly, and they filled it with water, the right amount of water. And now one day they measure it, and it doesn't have enough water. It's not 40 sa. So says the Mishnah, Kol Tairo shenasu al gabav limafreya. All tyrus, all purifications that happen in it retroactively, being b'rshus hayachid, being b'rshus harabim, whether this took place in a private domain or whether it took place in a public domain, tameos, we have to assume that they're tameh. So we have a mikvah, we knew it was kosher at the beginning, and today we measure it, we know it's not kosher, not enough water. When do we assume that the water dropped below the limit, below the line? So, because, let's say it's been a month. So, people were using the mikvah, they were koshering, they were purifying tamei vessels. So, how do we treat all those things that passed through the mikvah the last month? When did the mikvah drop below the line that it doesn't have enough water? So, the Mishnah says all things that were done in between the last time we measured and now, we have to treat as tameos, as tameh, as impure, that they did not get purified by the mikvah. So, and this is true whether in the Rishus HaYachid, the private domain, or in the Rishus HaRabim, the public domain. In general, we have a rule that Safek Tuma B'Rishus HaRabim is Tahar. We have a rule that when we have a doubt regarding Tuma, it depends where the doubt occurs. If the doubt occurs in a private domain, we have to be strict. If the doubt occurs in a public domain, we are lenient. I think it's a halacha l'Moshe Misinai. It's a biblical tradition. But our Mishnah is saying it doesn't matter over here. Either we don't treat this like a suffix. We treat it like a vadai. It's certain. We treat it like it was certainly lacking the whole time. That's what it says. Whether it was in the Rishus HaRabim, whether it was in the Rishus HaYachid, public domain, private domain, doesn't matter. We're going to say that things are tameh. And the question on Shmuel is, what's the difference? How come here we have a bogeres? Right now she's a bogeres. And Shmuel says, we can't assume she was a bogeres this morning. We only see her now as a bogeres. But we can't assume she was this morning. As opposed to a mikvah, if there's not enough water, we say you have to assume it was, if it's lacking water now, it's been lacking water for the last 3 weeks. What's the difference? Says the Gemara, Shani Hasam. No, the mikvah is different. De'ika l'meimar hamed tameh al cheskaso. Ve'emar lo tava. There it's different because there's either a person or a vessel that's tameh, and they have a chazaka that they're tameh. We know they're tameh before they enter the mikvah. So now you're going to say, now our question is, did they become purified by this mikvah? Well, we don't know, because we don't know when the mikvah became, began to lack, didn't have enough water, dropped below the line. and the person or the item has a chazaka that it's tamei. We know it's tamei. We don't know if it became pure. So there we say, follow the chazaka. The chazaka is it was tamei before it came into the mikvah. We don't know if the mikvah worked. It's going to still be tamei. So that's why over there we have to assume that the mikvah has been lacking for a while. Says the Gemara, though, adarabba. But on the contrary, hamid mikvah al chazkaso. But the mikvah also had a chazaka. The mikvah, we know it was full at the beginning. So the chazaka was that it's full, that it was full. The Amar, we should say, lo chaser, that it was not lacking yesterday, or the day before, or last week. Because the chazaka was that it was full. Yes, now it's not full, but it was, so the chazaka was that it was full. So why are we assuming that yesterday already it was lacking water? So the Gemara says, but harei chaser lefanecha. But it's empty in front of you right now. It's empty in front of you right now. So you have to assume that it's been empty the whole time. So you can't, it's true there was a chazaka that it was full, but when you're staring it in the face and it's not full anymore, so you lose that chazaka. We know it's not full anymore. So the Gemara says, "Well, hachanami hari bogeres lefanecha." So let's go back to our bogeres then. Shmuel is saying that you have to be concerned, even though she's a bogeres now, but maybe this morning she wasn't, and you have to be concerned for the father's kiddushin. Why? She's a bogeres right now. Look, she's a bogeres in front of us. So you should go by what's in front of us. We go by the mikvah. We say the mikvah is empty in front of us, so it must have been empty the whole time. Well, she's a bogeres in front of us. She must have been a bogeres this morning. That's what we should say. So we should say hashto de bagra. We should say, sorry, the answer we respond, no, hashto de bagra. We say she just became a bogeres now. Okay, so go back to the mikvah then. Hasam nami, hashto de chaser. So then go back to the mikvah and say it just became lacking now. Why are we saying that it's been lacking the whole time? Say it only became lacking now. So the Gemara says, Hasam tarti l'reyasa, ha-cha-cha l'reyasa. You know, the difference between the mikvah and this bogeres is that by the mikvah it has two strikes against it. Number one, the person going in has a cheskas tameh, or the item that's trying to be purified. We know it's tameh going in. So there's a cheskas tuma. And secondly, harei chaser lefanacha. Secondly, in front of us, it's chaser. It's not full. So between those two things, we're going to say that it wasn't full yesterday, it wasn't full last week when it was used, because it's working in combination of right now it's not full and the person or the item had a cheskas tameh. As opposed to in our case, where the question is on this bogeres. So yes, we have a bogeres in front of us, but there's no chazaka that she should be a bogeres. In fact, she was a naira before. So we have to. So here, even though she's a bogeres in front of us, but Shmuel says we have to be concerned that this morning she was not a bogeres and that her father's kiddushin was effective. Okay. Gemara continues towards the end of the first wide line. It says, "Shmuel ma'ishna mechaves." But according to Shmuel, we have another question. Why is this different than the case of the barrel? What's the case of the barrel? D'Tanya, we learning a brisa. Hayabodek es hachaves lahafrish aleh truma v'holech. So a guy has a barrel of wine, and he has to separate truma from all of his wine. So what he does is, instead of scooping out wine from every barrel, he has one barrel off to the side, and he keeps track, and he separates, let's say, 1/50th of every barrel of wine. From this barrel, he'll designate 1/50th. So let's say the barrel holds 100 glug. So every time he wants to separate truma, he'll say, let's say he has to separate truma from wine that's 100 glug. So that's normally you do about 1/50th. So he says, okay, instead of actually separating it out from this barrel that's full, 1/50th of it will become truma, which is 2 out of the 100. Okay, and then the next time he says, okay, now the next 2, and he keeps track until he fills it up, basically, until he uses up all the wine as truma. So he's going along like this, but might take a while. And one day, he checks it, and he opens the barrel, and v'achar kach nimtzeis chometz, and he finds that it turned to vinegar. And this Mishnah would be, according to opinion, that you cannot separate vinegar on wine. It's two separate species. It doesn't work to take truma, to use vinegar as your truma for wine. So he has a problem, because he doesn't know when it turned to vinegar, and everything that was truma, that while it was still wine, so then the separating truma worked. It was wine at that moment. But at some point, the truma he was trying to separate no longer was working, because it wasn't wine anymore, it was vinegar, which means that he has some barrels that he thought he was allowed to drink from, but really they're tevel, because they never had truma separated from them, and he's not allowed to drink from them. But he doesn't know when it turned to vinegar. So the Mishnah says, Kol gimel yamim vadai, 3 days we consider certain, mikan va'elach safek, and from there on we consider them a doubt. Now Rashi actually tells us that there's two opinions of how to interpret this line of the Mishnah. It's a machlokes Amoraim. It's a dispute between Amoraim and Baba Basra. One of them says as follows. What it means is, the first 3 days following the last time he checked it, and it was wine, so he can assume it's wine for the next 3 days. And any tevel, any wine that he was trying to take truma from during those first 3 days, it would work, because we know that this barrel was full of wine. And that certainly worked. But from then on, after the 3 days, anything else, he has to be concerned that it didn't work. And he would have to go back and separate truma from whatever wine he had used. He had separated from this barrel after the first 3 days of knowing that this barrel was wine. The other way to interpret it is that it means the most recent 3 days, we can assume are certainly, if it's vinegar today, it's been vinegar for the last 3 days, because the change would have started at least 3 days ago. And so the last 3 days are vadai, are certainly vinegar, and it's definitely not truma. And even a non-Kohen would be allowed to drink it. But anything before those 3 days would be besafek, we would be in doubt whether it is truma or not. Okay. And the difference is, for this wine, a non-Kohen wouldn't be able to drink it, or this vinegar, I guess. Okay, so that's the Mishnah there. And the point, though, is that we have a barrel. It's vinegar today, and we say, though, that up until now, we're in doubt what it was. So, ask the Gemara, Maishna dahacha vadai, Maishna dahacha safek. Before that, actually, sorry. Braminan chavas hamikvah. We actually first, before we get Shmuel involved, we consider the contradiction between this barrel and the mikvah. Maishna dahacha vadai, Maishna dahacha safek. When it came to the mikvah, we didn't have any doubts about it. We treated it like vadai. We said that it was certainly that it's been chaser the whole time. The last time we measured the mikvah is the last time we can assume that it was, or even have any question, assume and that it was 40 sa. After that, we say it's vadai, not 40 sa. It's certainly not 40 sa. We treat it like it's certainly not. If today we find it lacking, then we assume that it's been lacking the whole time. We don't treat it like a doubt. But over here, this barrel of wine, so for the first 3 days, we know it was certainly wine. And after that, suffix. Why suffix? and Safek, if it's a doubt, it's going to have certain practical differences. One of them is, like I alluded to earlier, that a doubt in the Rishus HaRabim, a Safek Tuma. Sorry, actually, this isn't really a question of Tuma, so that won't make a difference for this. But there will certainly be some differeces if it's out of doubt or if it's out of certainty. It would have made a difference for sure by the mikvah if it was out of doubt. That difference would have been relevant. If it was out of doubt by the mikvah, so in the Rishus HaRabim, in the public domain, we would have been able to be lenient, because that's the rule by Tuma. But we said it's not a doubt. It's vadai that it was lacking and it didn't work. So now coming back, so what's the difference? How come the mikvah we say it certainly was not full the whole time? If we find it that it's not full today, we say it was not full since the last time we checked it. But the barrel of wine, which is now vinegar, we have a barrel of vinegar today. We don't say it certainly was vinegar for the last while. We treat it like a question, like a doubt. So what's the difference? Says the Gemara, the Amar Rav Chanina Misuria. Rav Chanina Misuria explained, Man Tana Chavis, who is the author of the Mishnah regarding Chavis? Rabbi Shimon. It's Rabbi Shimon. Digabe mikvah nami sveika mashvi. And guess what? Rabbi Shimon actually holds it by the mikvah. It's also a doubt. It's also a suffix. And so they are consistent, because this Mishnah about the barrel is the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. And when it comes to the mikvah, Rabbi Shimon also considers it a doubt. D'Tanya, because we learned in a brisa. Kol tayr shenasu agabav lemafreya. All tires, all purifications that were done in that mikvah that today we found to be lacking, retroactively, bein b'rshus hayachad, bein b'rshus harabim, whether in the private domain, whether in the public domain, tmeos, they're tamei. Vadai, that was the first opinion. They're certainly tamei, no doubts. V'Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, b'rshus harabim tahoros. That in the public domain they will be tar, because he treats it like a suffix, like a doubt, we don't know, and a suffix b'rshus harabim, a suffix, a doubt regarding tuma in the public domain, we are lenient on. B'rshus hayachad, if it was in the Rishus HaYachid Tolin, so then it would remain in doubt, and would carry certain stringencies. But so that's Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon holds that it is a question. Aval l'Rabbanan, but according to the Rabbanan, tevel limafreya. The Rabbanan would say that it is tevel retroactively. In other words, now that we're saying that the case of the barrel is only according to Rabbi Shimon, he's the one who says it's a doubt. So the Rabbanan, meaning the other opinion with regards to mikvah, would also say that with regards to the barrel, it's certainly tevel. It certainly wasn't, the truma did not work. And any barrel if I have my barrel of wine that was tevel, and I needed to separate truma, and I was taking truma from this barrel, which is now vinegar, well, we're going to say it's been vinegar for the last month. I'm sorry. And any tevel, any wine that you tried to permit based on that truma is not permitted. It's tevel. You can't use it until you separate truma again. Vadai, that's what the Rabbanan will say. So if that's the case, so then we're back to our same type of question on Shmuel as we had before, that we have here, that according to the Rabbanan, this barrel we treat, if it's chometz, if it's vinegar today, we assume it's been vinegar for, since the last time we saw it was wine. So what's the difference, Shmuel? How come when it comes to a bogeres, you say, if she may be a bogeres now, but this morning she might not have been a bogeres, but yet when it comes to the barrel, the Rabbanan will say that if it's vinegar today, it's been vinegar. It's certainly been vinegar. We treat it like vadai. It's been vinegar since the last time we know it was wine. So the Gemara answers, Shani Hasam Dikul Meimar. There it's different, because one can say Hamed Tevel Al Chezkaso, because there the wine in the other barrels which you're trying to separate truma from, they're tevel. They have a chazaka that they're tevel. Tevel, they're forbidden as tevel. Tevel's, until you separate truma, it's called tevel. You can't consume it, and that's their chazaka. That's the established assumption. So you're trying to override that established assumption, but we don't know. So the Chazaka says that it's still tevel and that it didn't work, because we don't know if it worked. We don't know if it was vinegar or wine. Ve'emar lo niskan, we should say it wasn't fixed. Adar Abba says the Gemara, but on the contrary, Hemed yayin al chazkaso, ve'emar lo hechmitz. The wine has a chazaka. It was wine to start, so we should assume it's still wine until we know otherwise. Why are we saying that if we find it vinegar right now, we assume it's been vinegar since we last knew it was wine? On the contrary, if it was wine, the chazaka is that it was wine. It would stay wine. Yeah, but says the Gemara, but it's vinegar in front of us, so that ruins that chazaka of wine. Because right now you see it's vinegar, so you can't say, well, it has a chazaka that it's wine, but it's not wine anymore. It's vinegar. Hachanami, but then we answer back, Harehi bogeres lefanenu. But Shmuel, she's a bogeres in front of us. So if you're saying you go by what's in front of you, and if there's vinegar in front of you, you assume it's vinegar. So she's a bogeres in front of you, you should assume she's been a bogeres the whole time. Why are you concerned for the father's Kiddushin? So we say, Hashtahu de bagra. He'll say, she will say she just became a bogeres now. Well, hachanami hashtu de achmitz, and then the vinegar also say it just became vinegar now. What's the difference? Why the bogeres were concerned that she only became a bogeres now, and this morning she was a naira, and her father's kiddushin's good. But when it comes to the vinegar in the barrel, we say it's been vinegar for a while. Why? Why don't we say it just became vinegar now? So again, the Gemara says, because hasam tarti l'reyasa, because there, in the case of the barrel, there's two strikes against it. But here there's only one strike against it. When it comes to the barrel, so number one, we have Hamed Tevel al Chazkasa. We have our other barrels which we're trying to permit. They're Tevel. They're forbidden to consume until you separate Truma. They have a Chazaka that they're Tevel. Until you separate Truma, they're still Tevel. Did we separate Truma? We don't know, because we don't know if it was wine or vinegar at that time that he separated it. So therefore, again, he's separating it just in his mind. He's not seeing it. He's just saying, okay, two lug from the barrel are going to be truma. So we don't know if it was wine still. So we have a chazaka that the other stuff remains forbidden. And secondly, we have the reis right in front of us, this weakness right in front of us, that right now it's vinegar. So we have to assume that it's been vinegar the whole time. As opposed to, in our case, the bogeres, there's only one strike against it. Yes, she's a bogeres right now. So that would say, well, we should assume she's been a bogeres for a while. But no, there we'll say she just became a bogeres. There's only one strike against it. And we'll have to be concerned that this morning she was still an ira, and that her father's kiddushin was effective. And that's why Shmuel will require that she receive a get from both the man who her father accepted Kiddushin from and the man who she accepted Kiddushin from. Or again, like we said, she could get a get from one of them, and the other one can resubmit his Kiddushin to her and marry her.